Hello everyone. Today is Sunday, January the 21st, around 11:15 a.m. and I've already been on the trail for about 20-25 minutes. I'm hiking in the Shining Rock Wilderness of Pisgah National Forest, and I'm doing a loop in the northeast side of the wilderness to redo Shining Rock. About 6 or 7 years ago, I backpacked on the other side of the wilderness with my friend in the winter, and we stayed at Shining Rock Gap for the night, and we went up to Shining Rock, but I'm not sure that we actually went to the top of the rocks because it snowed about 6 inches that day and it was super icy. So because I'm a completist, I can in good conscience claim that peak on my South Beyond 6,000 list until I redo it. And this allows me to do a couple more trails in the wilderness that I haven't done. Fortunately, it is such a beautiful day, I don't mind redoing it. It is perfectly sunny, probably around mid-40s, but as you can see, I've already stripped down to my t-shirt and I started the hike wearing shorts. It's supposed to be around 50 today, but this is by far the toughest climb of the day right now. I started at the Big East Fork Trailhead and began the Shining Creek Trail, and now I am on the very bottom of the climb of the Old Butt Knob Trail. This is said to be the toughest climb in the wilderness and one of the toughest trails in Pisgah National Forest, and I've been on a lot of tough ones, so we'll see. I don't think it's as bad as some of the others I've been on. Based on the elevation gain, I think this trail is roughly 3.8 miles long, and it gains about 2,500 feet in elevation. But this is the toughest part at the start on the climb up Chestnut Ridge, where it gains over 1,500 feet in less than 2 miles. So it's slow going, but I get it out of the way at the beginning, and the rest of the day will be a lot easier. Since this loop with the Shining Creek Trail up to Shining Rock is only about 8.5 miles long, it gives me plenty of time and distance to do an out and back on the Art Loeb Trail. So I think I'm going to head south after Shining Rock towards Grassy Cove Top. And if I'm feeling good and ambitious, I might even continue on the Tennant Mountain just because it's so beautiful out. So I'm going to keep climbing, put this away, and I'll show you the map in a bit. Here's the map I brought with me. Shining Rock and Middle Prong Wildernesses by the USDA Forest Service. The 1 in 24,000 maps I love to use. I started at the P symbol off of Highway 276, and I followed the Shining Creek Trail south away from the river, and at Shining Creek Gap I began northwest on the Old Butt Knob Trail. You can see how steep the elevation change is at the beginning of this trail. Once I get above 5,000 feet, it's a lot easier, and I'll cross Old Butt Knob and then Dog Loser Knob, which is a pretty cool name, and the trail bypasses Shining Rock, and there's a short trail up to the top from there, and then it meets a bunch of trails at Shining Rock Gap, which is a great campsite, and from there I can take the Art Loeb Trail south, basically level towards Grassy Cove Top, which has great views. And if I'm feeling ambitious, I could go out and back to Tennant Mountain also. Anyways, I have to make my way back to Shining Rock Gap and take the Shining Creek Trail down, which parallels Shining Creek. This trail is slightly longer and a little less steep than Old Butt Knob, but it's still a tough trail. Got our first open viewpoint about a third of the way up Chestnut Ridge, looking southwest towards the Shining Creek Basin or gorge. I don't know if that qualifies as a gorge, but you can probably hear the roar of remaining snowmelt. And this abrupt face is a Raven Cliff Ridge and headwaters of Shining Creek up there. Not sure what that peak is. That could be Grassy Cove Top. We'll see, but first good viewpoint. I think there's a few more on this trek. I've already crossed the 5,000 foot elevation contour, which basically means I'm finished with the steep climb up Old Butt Knob Trail. And that took me under an hour, about 50 minutes, give or take, to climb about 1,500 feet. And now it's a steady approach to Old Butt Knob. And then from there, I drop into a gap, small climb up Dog Loser Knob, drop into another gap, and then climb up towards Shining Rock. So if you can manage the first half of this trail, you can easily do this loop, I'm guessing. I don't think it's nearly as hard as some other trails I've done. And right now, it's a pleasant walk through the forest. Here's a nice viewpoint just below the summit of Old Butt Knob, which is just up there. Looking south again, and I believe this broad peak due west is Dog Loser Knob, and above it is, you can barely see it, but there's a smaller peak in the middle of this saddle with a lot more conifer, dark conifer trees on top, and that's Shining Rock. And then in this direction should be Flower Knob and Grassy Cove Top. And further in the distance there is Tennant Mountain and Black Balsam Mountain. Grassy Cove Top straight ahead, the two peaks in the distance. You can barely see our Tennant and Black Balsam. Unfortunately, it's gotten pretty cloudy. You can kind of see the layer. Fortunately, it's not a low cloud ceiling, but it is a very big layer of clouds. I'm not sure it's going to be sunny the rest of the day. It's gotten quite a bit chillier, but it's only going to hamper long distance views, but I'll still have pretty good views from the top. I just passed the summit of Dog Loser Knob. The trail by the summit has been through this really narrow, cool tunnel of mostly mountain laurel, I believe, maybe some blueberry mixed in, and rhododendron. But as I keep heading west, I get some open views of Shining Rock. I think most of the white quartzite that's visible is just over the hump. So you can kind of see a little bit of it, but I think more of it is on the other side. But my destination is pretty close. I'm somewhere on top of Shining Rock, which is mostly a heath bald and it's much bigger than I remember. I'm guessing that when I came up in the winter many years ago, I only went to the closest viewpoint from the campsite. But right now, I'm actually not sure what the high point is. I'm looking at these two white quartzite rocks, thinking that could be the high point. Over here to the south, I think the main viewpoint is over there on the other side. That could be the high point. Over here on the east, there could be a high point over there. So I'm just gonna move around a little and tag each high rock, and then I'll try to find the good viewpoints. Even if this isn't a high point, this is a beautiful series of white quartzite outcrops. This is how the mountain and the wilderness got its name. These outcrops are shiny white, and they're visible from all of these peaks to the west and south in the Middle Prong Wilderness. And they glow bright white with some sunlight year round, so they look like snow. Shining Rock is just above the 6,000 foot contour. I've seen it listed anywhere from 6,010 to 6,020 feet. I'm still on number 30 out of 40 because I'm redoing it. I'll probably tag a couple more little knobs or rocks on the summit before I keep moving. But this is by far one of the most beautiful series of white quartzite outcrops you'll be able to find in the state. I believe this is the true summit of Shining Rock. I remember in one of my books it said the rock with two firs right beside it, and there's two distinct trees right there. And this series of rocks also happens to have wonderful views to the southeast. You can kind of see Tennant and Black Balsam Knob through the window there, but the real crowd pleaser is this huge swath to the southeast and east, part of the French Broad River Valley. I think those peaks in the distance there might be part of the Blue Wall, the peaks along the South Carolina border where there's multiple state parks in the Mountain Bridge Wilderness. I'm usually not certain of those, but due east here, you can see the Pisgah Ridge Massif with Mount Pisgah on the left, and Frying Pan Mountain is on the right before it starts dropping a little bit more. And in the distance here are the Hickory Nut Mountains. On the far right, I believe, is Sugarloaf, and then straight ahead, I can see the massive bald on Barrawallow Mountain, and on the right, I believe the pointy peak is Shuford Mountain, and on the left is Little Pisgah Mountain. And then this range of peaks beyond Pisgah Ridge are the Swannanoa Mountains. And then to the northeast, we can even see the Great Craggy and Black Mountains. So tremendous views. And I never went to this spot when I backpacked, so this is a surprise for me. Oh, you can even see the trail I came up on. This is the heath balds of Dog Loser Knob and Old Butt Knob. I knew there was a open view west. I saw a little trail leading off on the right just before I rejoined the main trail, and it led to some familiar cliffs, and now this familiar series of white quartzite. Nice views. Not as good as the east side, honestly, but on the left, The really flat peak is Reinhardt Knob, and the double hump is Richland Balsam, which I bushwhacked in October. And then further to the west are the Plot Balsam Mountains. The far right peak is Plot Balsam, and then Mount Lynn Lowry. And the double peaks are Browning Knob and Water Rock Knob, and then Yellowface. And you can see some of the Great Smokies. I'm actually not sure if on the right those are the Smokies or those are the beginning of the Bald Mountains, so I'm not gonna make stuff up. I don't think I remember this at all. This looks pretty awesome. I want to try to get up there. Looks like a path right there to the right. This actually looks much more like the spot that I came up to when I backpacked. I see more likeness in my old pictures from this angle. This is a massive series of sloped white quartzite. A little bit more hazardous to explore, especially while I'm holding the phone. You still get the big open views to the west of Richland Balsam on the left and the Plot Balsam Mountains on the right. But now we get a peek over this ridgeline of Sam Knob and Mount Hardy, the two massive peaks poking out there. And if I could steady myself, due south, we got Grassy Cove Top and then Black Balsam Knob. You know, I might have been wrong when I said the smaller outcrop is what you can see from the west, because this, my friends, is massive. And although on the sides there's not much white quartz, on the top there was. This is just a gigantic rock formation. Pretty cool. This is where me and my friend stayed midwinter. Temperatures around 15 degrees at night and about 6 inches of snowfall the prior day. And I have to say, Shining Rock Gap has some of the best campsites around. You're really close to the top of Shining Rock for views. There's a spring just south, a couple hundred yards, and you're also really close to the views from Grassy Cove Top. And these are nice and grassy with eastern facing openings, which lets the sun hit you early in the morning and dry anything out. There's campsites all through here, and then on the other side of the trail, it's a pretty popular area. So if you're looking to backpack here, you gotta get here early in the warmer months, or you can do it during the winter because there's no one up here. The Art Loeb Trail, passing through a really awesome tunnel of mountain laurel on my way towards Flower Gap and Grassy Cove Top. It was a mountain laurel tunnel, and now it's northern hardwoods. Looks to me like it might be ash, but as you know, I'm not the best with trees. But it's just really cool. I know this video is going to be quite long, but I've done a lot of fun exploring today, and I'm not done yet. Should be at Grassy Cove Top in 15-20 minutes or so, and it's already past 3 o'clock, so it's going to be my turnaround point, And I don't think I want to push all the way to Chestnut Mountain, which would add a couple miles and about 600 or 700 feet of elevation gain. So I'm gonna take the easy route, turn around at Grassy Cove, and take the Shining Creek Trail all the way down to the bottom. This is Flower Gap. Sits between Grassy Cove Top, which is up ahead, and Flower Knob, which is behind me. I believe the long, narrow, overgrown summit trail I just took passed right over the summit of Grassy Cove Top, somewhere up there in those shrubs and trees, at least according to my GPS. This peak is just above the 6,040 foot contour. I've seen it listed as 6,055, so that may be unofficial. It's somewhere in there. It is the tallest peak on Shining Rock Ledge, which is the long north-south ridge connecting this to Shining Rock. This summit is littered with lots of narrow trails, just like Shining Rock was, and I don't really have the time or energy to explore them all. I haven't done that yet, so hopefully one of these days I'll be able to see if there's some views on the other side of the mountain. You get somewhat open views to the west of Richland Balsam, and now you get wide open views due south of Sam Knob, Mount Hardy, and in front of me, Chestnut Mountain and Black Balsam Knob. I couldn't get these beforehand, and actually I want to see if I can make up for I think a mistake I made from Shining Rock. I kept pointing out a peak as being Grassy Cove Top and then Chestnut Mountain and Black Balsam behind it, but this trail passed over an unnamed knob on the way to Grassy Cove Top, and I believe that's what I was seeing, and the peak behind it was Grassy Cove Top, and I was never able to see Chestnut Mountain from my previous perch. But now I can see it. It looks awesome. Ivester Gap is down there, kind of out of sight, but you can see the road, Ivester Gap Trail, curving around to the right towards that gap between Sam Knob and Chestnut Bald. You also have really big open southeast views of the Blue Ridge Escarpment along the North Carolina, South Carolina border. In the foreground here, you can actually see Graveyard Fields. You can see on the Blue Ridge Parkway there's a pretty large parking area in the center. Below that, in the foreground, that depression is part of Graveyard Fields. Get pretty decent views again to the east of the Hickory Nut Mountains, and also Mount Pisgah to the northeast with the Black Mountain crest directly behind. So Grassy Cove Top is definitely a peak worth checking out. It doesn't have the best views in the area, but that's not really saying much. All of these peaks are pretty incredible. The trail crosses Daniels Cove branch a few hundred feet down there, and you can easily see this waterfall up in the distance. I wonder if in normal conditions this is pretty low flow and it's not as frothy and you might not be able to see it from the trail, but with this recent snowmelt, Looks pretty nice. Probably about 20 feet high, not counting the cascades below. I don't think I've ever seen this one mentioned. Hey guys, thought I'd go ahead and do the outro now because the sun is quickly setting, just past 6 o'clock. This might look a little weird because I have the flash on for this video segment. Anyways, this descent took a lot longer than expected, mainly because the entire time I was following North Prong Shining Creek, the trail was extremely technical and rocky, constantly switchbacking over small tributaries, really wet, some ice, and just really slow going, just so many rocks. I actually think the old Butt Knob Trail is easier, but since I've gotten along Shining Creek after the confluence, this grade has lessened up. It's a little flatter, way less rocks and roots on the trail, and I even got to see a surprise waterfall up on Daniels Cove Branch, and I don't think I've seen that mentioned anywhere before. I'm gonna have to verify that with some of the waterfall experts. So it might be called Daniels Cove Falls in the future. My unique name. Overall, this hike is gonna probably take around 7 hours and 15 minutes and end up being close to 12 miles long. If you're doing just the loop to Shining Rock, it's closer to 8.5, maybe 9 miles. I did a lot of wandering around Shining Rock, especially. I spent at least an hour up there, and you can do a lot of exploring this area. It is great for a weekend backpacking trip, and if you stay a little longer, you can hike out to Cold Mountain or Tennant Mountain in Black Balsam, and there are a few better spots to camp than near Shining Rock Gap. So I know this is probably a really long video at this point. I'm going to go ahead and finish up. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys next time.